Bum-ba-da-dum! Hello and welcome to the very first installment of Art History, Abridged. This first lesson is Giotto, the father of naturalism. So to set up this story, first I'm going to have to explain how artists learned their trade back in the day. The teacher was an older, married, well-versed master artist with a place in the Artists' Guild, which I won't get into right now. This artist would take on apprentices in his workshop, and these were little boys, usually around 8 or 9, that would be given away by their family so they could live with this master artist. Nowadays, an older, artistic man living with one wife and a horde of young, unrelated boys at his beck and call would raise some red flags, but back then, not so much. So this master would teach the apprentices how to make canvas, how to mix paints, etc., etc. Now for the actual painting aspect, it was very monkey see, monkey do. An artist would know that when you draw a face, the eyes go here, nose goes here, mouth goes here, but not from looking, because the master told him. And he would tell him that this is how you draw an eye, this is how you draw a nose, and this is how you draw a mouth, etc., etc. Then, after 8 or 10 years of this, the boys would head out on their own and wander around looking for work. This is just how things went down. But soon, this young maverick would come along and blow the panties off the art world with some revolutionary shit. This story begins with the Italian master painter, Cimabue. So the story goes that Cimabue was just strolling through the countryside and he came across a shepherd. He and the shepherd made polite conversation for a bit, hey, what's up, nice sheep, why thank you, I like your hat. And then Cimabue notices that this shepherd's son is off to the side doing something in the dirt with a stick. Intrigued, he goes over to check it out and he sees, hey, this kid is totally drawing a sheep in the dirt with a stick. Cimabue is baffled because while today artists are the poorest of the poor, back then, while not rich, artists had to be of a certain class, one of which a shepherd's son was most definitely below. So there's no way this kid could have gotten the education required to know how to draw a sheep. So Cimabue goes over and says, who taught you how to draw this sheep? And the kid goes, no one? And Cimabue goes, but then how did you know? And the kid goes, well, there's one right there. In fact, they're everywhere. I just drew what I saw. It's not that complicated. And to us, no, it's not. That's how you draw. But back then it was, because you didn't learn how to draw a sheep by looking at a sheep. You learned how to draw a sheep because a master told you how to draw a damn sheep. And in a display of how locked into a stupid idea humans can get, it no longer occurred to artists to look at the world for reference, and Cimabue was floored. He was so floored that he apparently turned to the shepherd and demanded that he have this guy's son to come live with him in his workshop. Once again today, red flags, but back then it was a great opportunity, so he let the strange man take his child. So as you probably assumed, this little kid grew up and he became the subject of today's lesson, Giotto. This is a terrible drawing of him, but who cares? Giotto was taught in the traditional workshop style, but he never forgot that doodle of a sheep, and you can see it in his artwork with natural settings, direction of light, natural poses, etc., etc. Here's something for comparison. Here's a painting by Cimabue, here's a painting by Giotto. Yes, they are very similar. They're both Madonna and Enthroned, they're very gold and Byzantine, they're the same kind of setup, but in Cimabue's, all the faces are pretty much the same, and they're all kind of the same pose. Giotto's, he tried for differences, and he put them in natural poses. There's direction of light, you can see it in the shading. Cimabue's doesn't really have that. And this may not seem like very much, but Giotto kind of started a revolution of artists looking at the world once again to get inspiration, which led to linear perspective, the golden ratio, which is all pretty damn awesome. And without this, we wouldn't have had this, or even this, holy crap, that's a painting, or even this, bam, surrealism. Now we're not done yet. So here's the reason I love art history. Most people probably picture these guys as floating around on clouds of awesome in Italy and Paris spouting poetry. It might just be me. Either way, they were just regular guys. If anything, they were artists, and anyone who knows artists knows that these were pretty interesting characters than they wanted to be. And so here's a story about Giotto that I think is both pretty damn funny and shows his personality in a rather interesting light. So remember that painting I showed earlier? This one right here? Well, it was painted in the Arena Chapel in Padua, Italy, and while Giotto was painting it, his friend Dante Alighieri came to visit him. This is the guy from Dante's Inferno, the one who wrote the Divine Comedy. So in the day, he watches Giotto paint, and then he goes back and kicks back with some wine at Giotto's house after meeting his family. Then, according to Dante's journal, he asks, and I'm paraphrasing, "Hey Giotto, how can you make such beautiful paintings and yet make such ugly kids?" Which is kind of harsh considering that Dante wasn't exactly pretty himself. And then, like a boss, rather than being offended, Giotto, and I'm not paraphrasing, says, "Because I create in the daylight, but I procreate in the dark." So he's basically saying that he paints in the light, but it's dark when he does his baby making, so he makes a few mistakes. So the two of them kick back laughing, while Giotto's kids probably sit in the corner crying because Daddy basically agreed that they're butt ugly. And that's pretty harsh. Good job, Giotto. Great parenting. The end.